Good afternoon. Today we're gonna make an investigation about certain topics that have influenced the main changes in our society. To start with, I'm gonna make a list of the most important events that have occurred during the last decade and that have altered the course of our society and political and social and even cultural aspects, and that have changed the way certain governments relate between each other or the relationships they have, and that have in the end altered our lives as well.
The internet is not something that new, but neither is the idea of creating a network of information sharing, because long before the modern technology existed, there were already some scientists that had thought in the existence of worldwide networks of information, such as Nikola Tesla, who toyed with the idea of a world wireless system in the early 19,000s. However, the idea didn't become that real until the 1960s, when there were people who actually thought about the possibility of the computers being able to share information on research and development in military and scientific fields. The pioneer of this idea was Joseph Karl Rovnet Licklider, as he worked on the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency in 1962 in order to try to develop a global network of computers. However, it was Leonard Kleinrock who came up with the theory of packet switching, which was one of the first bases for the internet connections. The internet and the web are the same things, but they're actually not. Without the creation of the internet, the World Wide Web, or just known as the web, wouldn't have been able to emerge, because while the internet is a networking infrastructure, as it connects millions of computers together globally, forming a network in which computers from all over the world are able to communicate as long as they were connected to internet. The web is just a way of accessing information through the internet. It's an information sharing model that's built on top of the internet itself. So, the web couldn't have possibly emerged if it wasn't for the creation of the internet decades before. The web is just one of the ways the information can be disseminated over the internet, but it has been one of the most revolutionary events of the last 2 decades, as it hasn't just brought computers together, and it hasn't been possible has made it possible for them to share information. It has just revolutionized the entire world. The scientist Tim Berners-Lee invented it at the beginnings of the 19th decade. He said that the purpose of this was the creation of new links and new materials by readers so that authorship becomes universal. He also stated, "I want a web that's open, works internationally, works as well as possible, and that's non-nation based." He actually didn't realize the extent of his invention, because he achieved his goal of connecting people and for information to be universal. However, it became so important that now we have access to almost any kind of information in just a matter of seconds. Or we're able to talk to someone who lives miles away from us in a super easy way. It hasn't only shaped the way we communicate or research information, but also the way we think and how we see the world, as it has opened many new doors into the reality of many other people's lives, making it possible for humanity to become more united than ever. The Soviet Union was made up of 15 republics, which were Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Estonia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. This enormous country was the main representative of the communism, which pretended for every single citizen to be provided by this government's hand with everything they needed, taking all the monopolies aside. However, the people's needs weren't only material ones. They felt hopeless and without liberties, so they weren't absolutely content with their government. Also, there was the fact that the whole Europe was divided in parties, and there wasn't enough freedom and people's opinion wasn't heard by most governments. Then, By 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev was elected, being the eighth and last leader of the Soviet Union. He noticed the need of people, so he tried to put a balance between the people's demands and the government's interests. But in the process, he ended up implementing a bit of capitalism then, and started to make relations with capitalist countries, and therefore, this started to decrease the power of the Socialist Party. One of his main reforms was a new and more democratic election system. For example, he took away the Communist Party special status, and the power was handed to the Congress of People's Duty of the Soviet Union, which was the Soviet Union's first democratic parliament. Things didn't improve for the USSR because by 1989, Poland began to rebel against their government. And so by this event, other communist countries began to follow their example, such as Slovenia, Hungary, Ukraine, the Czech Republic, among many others. This put a lot of pressure on the communist government, as there were already a lot of problems within the countries that conformed the Soviet Union, because many of them wanted to be independent nations, such as Lithuania and Ukraine. So all of this ended up blowing it apart, and no matter how many efforts and new politics Gorbachev implemented, the socialists couldn't gain the power it once had, and this was fully proven by December 1991, when the Soviet Union crumbled apart and its disintegration was finally announced. On the morning of September 11, 2001, an event without precedents took place in the United States. It all began when several armed militants that had been connected to the Islamic extremist group known as Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 commercial airplanes. They had the purpose of making damage to strategic places or cities so that their messages didn't go unheard. They committed suicidal attacks with the hijacked planes. 2 of the ones crashed against the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center located in New York City. Another plane crashed in the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and the last one crashed in a field in the state of Pennsylvania. The result of the attacks were the destructions of the 2 towers of the World Trade Center and about 3,000 deaths among the 3 attacks. And even though there hasn't been an official reason of why the attacks were perpetuated, some accredit these Machiavellian events to bin Laden, as he stated that his war was about the defense of the Islam, and his justification was made when he emphasized the humiliation of the Muslim world and the negative effect of the U.S. policies in the Middle East. He often talked about the denigration suffered by Muslims at the hands of the West, so not only for him, but many Muslims as well, these events had to be avenged and reversed. After the attacks, all the country was shocked, and many people began to fear for their lives, and started to believe that the apparent peace had come to its end. The government also felt the necessity to implement many national measurements. They increased the governmental security, and the privacy of the citizens became even more restricted, as they implemented government vigilance in order to be able to detect any kind of conspiracy or attempt to attack against the government or the country itself. It was under the same reasoning that the US government justified the attack to some Islamic countries, to respond to the attack that has just been perpetuated and to prevent any future assault from developing. So, it was the same year that in Afghanistan began the war against terror, but then it moved on to several other Islamic countries, such as Pakistan, Yemen, Libya, Palestine, Iraq, and Syria, resulting in the death of millions of soldiers and civilians from these countries, besides the destruction of a great amount of the city's infrastructure that until now hasn't been able to recover. The actual number of deaths is not known, but an approximate of the number of the deaths from 2001 until this year has been of 4,005,100 people. The ones that haven't only been soldiers or terrorists, but also innocent citizens, such as fathers, mothers, young people, and even children and babies. Before the decade of 2000s, banks wouldn't have allowed someone who didn't have a steady job or a specific amount of money income to ask for a mortgage to buy a house. A mortgage is a piece of paper that the bank gives you when you pay for the loan that they give you to buy a house. However, although these politics changed at the beginning of this decade, they became more flexible in this matter and allowed people with fewer possibilities to get mortgages. However, in return, they sold those mortgages to third parties, who were independent people or other banks, in order to get more taxes and increase their incomes. However, as this happened, the payment of these mortgages increased, making it impossible for people to pay them, and resulted in enormous debts. All of these irregularities were very common, so suddenly, from one moment to another, most of the banks were indebted, and the world's economy began to collapse by September 2008. Many investors forfeited all their shares of stock, and therefore, all the money invested was lost. This created a domino effect that created a global financial crisis, forcing several countries into taking and making loans, and eventually having many debts, which forced for the governments to put the taxes higher, and this affected every single person that lived in the affected countries, that were mostly all over the world. This has been one of the strongest and more devastating financial crises of all times, and its effects had been so big that almost a decade before it ended, we still live many of its consequences, since several countries all over the world, the US and Mexico included, haven't been able to recover from this strong financial collapse, as they still have major debts originated from this period and which have only added up to the recent ones, creating a biased cycle of economic recess and payment of debts, which affect every single one of us. As the wages decrease, the price of everything rises, and the government increases the taxes we must pay, making it impossible for a lot of people to overcome the never-ending financial struggle. The recent US elections have caused a lot of commotion all over the world, but why is that? Well, to start with, the United States is the ruling country in the world, and the one with the most financial, political, and economic power. And whatever happens within it ends up affecting us in a way or another. The result was one that many didn't expect, as it was the least popular candidate who won the elections, and even though the media has shown Donald Trump as a fool of a candidate and even made fun of him throughout all his elective campaign, it was the majority of the US population who voted for him and chose him as their next president. But why was the world so preoccupied as the results of the United States elections were shown? What's for the world to lose if the US has Donald Trump as their next president? Well, the thing is that the results of the elections aren't going to wait and show up until 2017. They are already here. To start with, when the news of Trump's victory came out, many companies' stock index had some percentage loss in the same night of the elections, because the prospect of Donald Trump winning the elections made many investors to withdraw the investments on the American enterprises due to the uncertainty of the financial market. This caused a domino effect, and all the countries that depend on the US economy also suffered many financial losses. For example, the Japanese yen fell 4% in an overnight trading. The Mexican peso plunged 13% at the beginning of the elections before it stabilized at 8.7% at 19.91 pesos to $1. Hong Kong's Hang Seng fell 2.2%. Also, in Europe, the Stock Europe 16 index was off 0.7%, after dropping as much as 2.4%. So this means that it wasn't only the Mexican economy that was affected from the results. It was a domino effect that happened all over the world. Besides, the effects weren't only economic ones. There were also some immediate social implications after the election night. Since in all these days that have passed, there have been reports on the social media of racial offenses in the US being increased, especially to people with Latin, Muslim, and African American ascendants. All of this has happened only a couple of days after the magnate was elected. So, what will happen not only to the US, but the rest of the world when he takes up his charge as the new president of the most powerful nation of the world?
Choose certain topics that have been really crucial for the changes that have occurred in our society since the fall of the communist bloc until today. One of these main topics are going to be globalization, terrorist attacks, and the importance of technology in our daily lives. So, let's begin.
Globalización el globo es del mundo, es mundial, universal, ¿verdad? Entonces, globalización es ¿qué componen al mundo, al universo, al mundo? Pues los países. Todos los países tienen que estar entrelazados en todos los rubros y giros, por ejemplo, comerciales, industriales, ¿sí? ¿Qué podemos decir más? Pues a través, como se lleva, de la diplomacia. Esa es la globalización. Eso es para mí. Un intercambio de culturas, de negocios, de política, ¿verdad? De mercado, así.
Pregunta súper interesantísima, ¿no? La globalización tiene sentido negativo, más bien, porque está dirigida y controlada por los Illuminati. ¿Has oído hablar de ellos, no? Entonces, no se fijan en la gente pobre. El dinero es el mandamás ahí. Es decir, que los grandes bancos van a ser los jefes. Ese es el comunismo. Ese es el comunismo del cual habla la Virgen de Fátima y todos esos. No es el comunismo de Rusia. Ese es el comunismo. Ellos arriba son los coludos y todos los demás los rabones, ¿ves? Todos vamos a estar con las mismas ideas. Nos van a juzgar ellos, ¿no? Y es algo que no debe darse.
La globalización es cuando los países del mundo, del globo, intercambian bienes, servicios, materias primas, ideas. Por ejemplo, cuando México vende el petróleo o exporta y también importan. Y, por ejemplo, las ideas como, por ejemplo, de que la independencia de México todo se basa en la Revolución Francesa, que eso inspiró a la independencia de Estados Unidos. Y cuando hubo la independencia de Estados Unidos, nosotros tuvimos nuestra independencia, ya que las ideas se pasan de un lado a otro, y eso es básicamente la globalización.
Son actos de violencia provocados por países, sobre todo siempre por todas las naciones ricas, las naciones industrializadas, los imperios nuevos. Utilizan el terrorismo para obtener de los países más débiles o sus competentes, sus enemigos, obtener beneficios como amedrentándolos, amenazándolos, hostilizándolos, para obtener beneficios pues de bastante también índole, ¿verdad? Como comerciales, políticos también, ¿verdad?
El terrorismo está financiado por Estados Unidos. Ya viste los nuevos de Clinton, ¿no? Los correos electrónicos.
Sí, los
ellos
correos.
ellos financian completamente al ISIS para adueñarse de la zona aquella. El ISIS está financiadísimo por los árabes, por los Estados Unidos. Es decir, ellos son los terroristas, el terrorismo en sí, ¿no?
¿Y con qué propósito cree que hagan estos actos de violencia contra ellos mismos para culpar a los
El
países?
petróleo, ¿no? Están muy mal.
Es cuando personas de diferentes culturas, religiones, países, más cosas, tienen un conflicto por esas mismas razones. Por ejemplo, que tienen diferentes religiones o piensan de manera diferente. Entonces, esos dos países, uno ofende a otro y el país ofendido crea grupos los cuales responden de manera violenta ante esa ofensa. Y cuando, por ejemplo, con bombas, atentados, entre otras cosas, a personas pues, inocentes y a esas personas como para hacer justicia en sus propias manos.
Unipolar es, pues, la palabra quiere decir de un solo polo, de un solo lado, ¿verdad? ¿Cuántos polos tenemos en este mundo? Dos. Polo norte y el polo sur. Entonces un solo polo, hablando ya de manera social, es lo que quiere dar usted a entender, de manera sociable, pues que fuéramos un país pacifista, universal, ayudarnos unos a otros, haciendo a un lado esa globalización muchas veces que también es un terrorismo industrial, haciendo a un lado también el terrorismo que es el ataque violento a otros países para obtener venganzas. Entonces, un universo o un mundo unipolar sería de un solo polo, viéndolo de un mundo pacifista, de que no haya fronteras, no haya razas, color de razas, que seamos una sola humanidad universal.
Polar es cuando el mundo es gobernado, bueno, no gobernado, sino todas las acciones, por ejemplo, financieras, están en un solo país, que en este caso es Estados Unidos, ya que después de que se cayó la Unión Soviética, cuando finalizó la Guerra Fría, Estados Unidos fue el que quedó, por así decirlo, de pie, y fue el que se convirtió en una potencia mundial, y ahora muchas materias primas, importaciones, exportaciones vienen a través de él, de esa potencia.
La que estamos viviendo, que es la electrónica, la era electrónica del dígito, la que tiene usted, por ejemplo, aquí es un teléfono celular, ¿verdad? ¿Sí? El que le llaman, en inglés le llaman el touch, en español es el digital. Ese es que ahora se utiliza todo para las comunicaciones, para la cultura, inclusive para la educación. En el aspecto educativo se necesita la nueva tecnología digital, muy avanzada. Ya sabemos que la computación, ¿verdad? Ahí viene todo como una obra de magia, ¿verdad? Está bien, sí.
La era digital es la era en la que estamos viviendo en este momento, que está básicamente, pues, por así decirlo, liderada por máquinas, ya que muchas de las cosas que hacemos, bueno, el 99% de las cosas que hacemos diariamente, lo hacemos gracias a máquinas. Por ejemplo, desde que nos despertamos gracias a una máquina, y es el teléfono, un despertador. Cocinamos gracias a una máquina. Hablamos por teléfono, nos pasamos gran parte del día en una máquina, que es el teléfono. Y pues nos transportamos en una máquina, el carro, o sea, es lo que ahorita está es más importante en estos momentos, y que pues básicamente nos estamos haciendo dependientes de ello. Por ejemplo, de que no te puedes despegar de tu celular por la nueva actualización que subieron de, no sé, una aplicación X.
The invention of the World Wide Web was one of the main keys for the boom of the digital era, as it has helped for us to be in constant communication since then, by making it easier to trade information in a matter of seconds. Also, the globalization of ideas, thoughts, belief, and many other aspects has been possible. But it hasn't all been good things, as the web has been actually one of the most important tools in our lives. It has been also used for bad things, such as trading of personal information of other people, blackmailing, and even terrorist attacks that have been perpetuated with the help of the web's information, and also with the mere possibility of offering people a way of communicating even when they're thousands of miles away. The fall of the communist bloc brought the unipolar world, as it ended with the bipolar era. It also allowed for the countries that belonged to the socialism to gain more liberties and be part of the Western culture, which had just started to have major advances in technology such as the cell phone, the internet, and many others, and to fully become part of this society that would start to globalize as the technological advances started to take place and the internet to gain strength. The 9/11 attacks involved many technological aspects for it to be perpetuated. For example, if it hadn't been for the existence of cell phones, the hijackers wouldn't have been able to make all their moves as quickly and as efficiently as they did, because the communication wouldn't have been that good, and they would have had to make more things for it to occur. It was clearly a terrorist attack, as the hijackers had religious and even political motives to want to attack the most powerful nation of the world. Also, this event showed how important the United States actually is, because after this event, the government made a decision that was to start the war against terror, and affected a lot of small countries all across the world, and that until now hasn't stopped. The 2008 crisis was globalized, as every single country in the world was affected by it in a way or another. It also showed how much does the US economy affect the world's economy as well, because it was in the most powerful country that the financial problems began, and then it started to spread all over the world. The digital era was also a key for this to occur, because many of the transactions that occurred during these financial irregularities occurred by the internet. But it was also a medium that allowed people to overcome the situation, because it was easier to realize where the main problems were, what could you do about it, and keep track of all the financial situation and be able to act upon it. The US election yet again showed off this country's power, because as the news of the magnate Donald Trump being elected were known, the markets of many countries all over the world began to crash. This event also had many social implications, because some supporters of the new elected president approved for the people of Latin, Muslim, and African American descendants that live in the US to be deported, arguing that it's their fault for terrorist attacks and delinquency to occur. Besides, all of this information wouldn't have been able to reach all corners of the globe if it wasn't for the internet, but especially for the social media.
And to finalize, I'm gonna make an interview to my dad, who has a broad knowledge in history and who's gonna help me to link some of the most important aspects that have occurred during the last decade and how they have developed in more specific ways in our society and how have they affected us. Yep.
La globalización fue una idea de presidentes como Ronald Reagan y Margaret Thatcher, que trajeron teorías de la Escuela de Chicago en las cuales pretendían llevar el comercio, libre comercio, a todo el mundo y de esa manera, por lo menos externamente, bajar los aranceles, bajar los costos y poder comerciar todo el mundo con todo el mundo. Esencialmente esa es la idea que nos vendieron a la humanidad.
En la mayoría de los casos, ¿qué fue lo que causó los ataques terroristas del siglo XXI?
El extremismo religioso, las políticas equivocadas de las potencias dominantes, el exceso de pobreza, la falta de oportunidades de las personas, los conflictos entre diferentes sectas y religiones y los conflictos políticos generados por las potencias dominantes.
¿Tiene algo que ver los conflictos causados por la religión?
Claro, de la política de muchas sectas religiosas han salido grandes males, grandes fanatismos, que la gente al querer tener la razón a toda costa ha creado matanzas y desavenencias muy graves.
Y desde tu punto de vista, ¿cómo se enlaza el fin de la Guerra Fría con el comienzo de un mundo unipolar?
Obviamente, al ganar Estados Unidos la contienda de la Guerra Fría y sacar de la escena política a la Unión Soviética, se quedó como ganador absoluto del paquete de poder en la Tierra, y en ese momento comenzaron los políticos neoconservadores de Washington a formular sus ideas de un dominio total económico e ideológico de todos y de todo.
¿Y cómo crees que ha influenciado la era digital a nuestra sociedad actual?
El hecho de que las ideas y las personas puedan comunicarse de manera casi instantánea hace que los antiguos ejecutores de las ideas, las antiguas personas que llevaban las noticias de aquí a allá, hayan perdido vigencia y mucha credibilidad, dado que casi siempre se van por las líneas que los gobiernos les piden, y las personas son en general mucho más difíciles de coaccionar para que digan y hagan lo que los gobiernos quieren, por lo que ha habido un aumento extraordinario de ideas, algunas muy positivas, otras no tan positivas, algunas malas y otras bastante vergonzosas, lo cual ha revolucionado en muchos sentidos a la humanidad y le ha dado la oportunidad de elegir de una manera diferente a la que los políticos desean.
Muchas gracias.
De nada.
Why did globalization emerge? Well, as we learn from all the centuries that human being has existed, we have had the need to relationate and communicate between us, not only between human beings but also between communities and the countries that have emerged through human history. So this has been represented mainly in the trade agreements that have developed between countries and the sharing of ideas and language between countries and civilizations all through history. But in the last decades, this has been potentialized by the influence of technology, as
We are now able to communicate between us in mere seconds. We can send text to another person that's in a foreign country, and they're able to send it back to us, like the answer, in no time. So information has become something really fundamental for this society, and technology has made it possible for us to communicate and to learn more in a more efficient way. Also, the advances in transportation has been a really good thing for globalization to occur, because we are able to travel from one country to another and take with us all our beliefs, our thoughts, or ideas, and share it with the country or the civilization we are visiting. This way, a net is created between all the people and the ideas, and not only material things, but more beliefs get globalized. In most cases, what has caused the terrorist attacks in the 21st century? Well, terrorist attacks have occurred since previous centuries, but in the 21st have occurred most of the more important and destructive terrorist attacks in several countries that have damaged a lot of people. And most of the principal reasons that this has occurred is because the country to which the attack is perpetrated, and normally the small amount of people, they are religious extremists, mainly belonging to the Muslim religion, because there have been a lot of attacks against their religion, their culture, their beliefs, and mainly their God. And to them, that's something sacred. Of course, to everyone, our beliefs and religion is something really important. But to them, it's something fundamental because it's part of them. They believe it's part of their essence. So when the US put troops in Saudi Arabia, it was something really, really offensive to them because it's a sacred place. So this was one of the many reasons that they had in order to want to attack the United States, for example, because there have been many other attacks against other countries. But one of the most important was the one that occurred in the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. And this was mainly because the US government, and well, the US people in general, didn't really respect the Muslim minorities, and there were a lot of conflict between that minority and the countries that were Muslim and the US government. So main extremist religious groups that belong to the Islam wanted to take vengeance against the government in name of their God and their religion, to protect their honor and, well, yeah, take vengeance of those that have made them feel less worthy. But I don't believe that there's enough reason for people to commit attacks against innocent people for acts that governments or some sort of have said and done in the past. I think there are more efficient ways for people to be able to communicate their disagreements that don't involve violence, not death. The end of the Cold War relates to the creation of a unipolar world. Well, as we know, the Cold War was a conflict between the communist and the capitalist bloc. They were confronted because they wanted to be the one that ruled everything from politic to ideological things. And of course, the monetary and power issues. They wanted to be in
charge of the rest of the countries. But at the end, the people that belong to the communist countries weren't happy with the way their governments were being towards them. They didn't have that much liberty, so they wanted to get away from it. They made a lot of rebellions, and in the end, the communist bloc fell apart. And with it, the Soviet Union also collapsed. And this meant that of the two blocs that were confronted, of course, the capitalist bloc was the one that ended up being victorious. So this was mainly led by the US, that was and has been since then a really, really powerful country, not only in politics but also in monetary things and enterprises, and has most of the most powerful world banks. So it's a really powerful country, and since it didn't have any rivalry, it became the main country in the whole world, marking the beginning of a unipolar world that was ruled by the US. Well, I believe that technology has been the key for this to happen, because technology has made information to be like at the reach of our hands, that we are now able to communicate with each other in a really efficient and quick way. Now we are aware of everything that happens, not only outside our house or in our country, but all over the globe. So we are able to act and think about how the consequences that happen all over the world affect us. So this has made us a little bit more aware society of what happens, and it has also made us a little bit lazy, as technology has made us a really easy life, because now we don't have to work that much to get the same things we needed before technology existed. We now have machines that do a lot of things that before we had to do. We are able to travel and move really fast, to cook and make things in 1/3 or even less of the time that it took us before. So yeah, technology has been really, really helpful for our lives, and in many ways it has helped us. But it has been, because it has been so easy that now we don't have to make that much of an effort to work for things we want or need in life. So I think it's really important for us to analyze what's really important for us to live in the hands of technology, and what's important to live in our own hands, so that we don't let technology to eat us alive and be the one that ends up living in our world in a, of course, metaphoric way. Let's hope not in a really literal way. Thank you.